Okay, so this video goes over question 15, 17, and 19 on page 30. So I always need to start when I'm going to factor by making sure that my equation is equal to 0. So I get 3r squared minus 16r minus 12 equals 0. So since it's called AC method, I'm going to start off by multiplying a times c. So a times c is negative 36. So I'm looking for what multiplies to give me negative 36 and adds to give me my b term, negative 16. So the two numbers that work for that are negative 18 times 2 is negative 36, and negative 18 plus 2 is negative 16. So I'm going to take my quadratic, and I'm going to rewrite negative 16r as negative 18r plus 2r. This then allows me to make two groups, my first group and my second group. Also another reason we call it factoring by grouping. The first group has an r in common and a 3. So if I take 3 and r away from 3r squared, I'm left with r. If I take 3 and r away from negative 18r, I'm left with negative 6. Now I know my second group has to have the same binomial in common, r minus 6. So that kind of makes my second job easier of picking what comes out of the second group. It has to be a 2. 2 times r is 2r, 2 times negative 6 is negative 12. So both terms, or both groups, have an r minus 6 in common. So I'm going to take that away as my first binomial, and I'm left with 3r and positive 2 as my second binomial. And then the zero product property says that if I'm multiplying two things together to get 0, one of those things has to equal 0. So I'm going to make my two equations equal to 0, or my two binomials equal to 0. So my final answer is that r is 6 or r is negative 2/3. Those are my two answers. So my next question, 17, is 7k squared minus 6k plus 3 equals 3. So it has to be equal to 0. So I'm going to start by subtracting 3 from both sides. That gives me 7k squared minus 6k. These cancel out, and I'm left with equals 0. So when I don't have a c value, I'm not going to bother using AC method. What I'm going to do instead is look at it as though I have just one group, 7k squared minus 6k. So those both have a k in common that I can factor out, and I'm left with 7k minus 6. I'm actually done at this point because I have one thing times another thing equal to 0. So I can make my two equations. The first one would just be that k equals 0. That's already my answer. And that 7k minus 6 equals 0. And if I solve that, I get k is 6/7. So it's actually a lot easier when there's no c term because you don't have to go through the whole AC method. You can just factor the two terms by grouping. So number 19 is the same as 17. I don't have a c value, so I don't need to do AC method. All I need to do is make one group, factor out what they have in common, which is x. Now it's in factored form, so I just use the zero product property to make my two equations, and I get my two answers that x is 0 and x is negative 2/7.